Hi everyone. Today we are going to talk about the auditory pathway, which is the topic of our spatial senses. In last two lectures we have seen the mechanism of hearing and structure of ear, and today we are going to talk about the auditory pathway. So basically this question is being asked in 5 marks question, and it is important because it is being asked frequently. So let's start. Before starting our topic, I want to introduce to you to the mnemonic. Mnemonic નો મતલબ થાય the response tracing. મતલબ in easier language, the trick to remember the auditory pathway or any pathway, right? સો તમારે જ્યારે ઓડિટરી પાથવે વિશે લખવાનું હોય તો યુ શુડ હેવ ટુ રિમેમ્બર ધીસ થિંગ AC સ્લિમ. સો ઇફ યુ રિમેમ્બર ધીસ તો આની સાથેના જે પણ જે પણ વસ્તુ આની સાથે અટેચ છે યુ વિલ કમ ટુ નો ઇટ ઇઝીલી. સો ઇટ વુડ બી beneficial to you, right? So let's start. So AC slim ma A means auditory nerve, C means cochlear nucleus, S for superior olivary nucleus, L for lateral lemniscus, I for inferior colliculus, and M for medial geniculate body. આ જે એસી સ્લિમ છે એની અંદર આખો ઓડિટરી પાથવે આવી ગયો, ક્યાંથી નર્વ ઇમ્પલ્સ ક્યાં જાય છે, રાઈટ? So this was it. Now we are going to start our topic. We'll come back to this again. Fibers of auditory pathway pass through cochlear division of vestibulocochlear nerve. It is also known as auditory nerve. Major part of the auditory pathway lies in medulla oblongata, midbrain, and thalamic region. Higher center for hearing is in temporal lobe of cerebral cortex, where the fibers of auditory pathway finally terminate. Fibers are both crossed and uncrossed so that each cochlea is represented in the cortex on both the sides. Receptors. Hair cells in organ of corti are the receptors of the auditory sensation. Hair cells are of two types: outer hair cells and inner hair cells, and we have talked about this in our previous lectures. All the hair cells are innervated by the afferent and efferent nerve fibers. Afferent nerve fibers from the hair cells form auditory nerve. જ્યારે આપણે ટેમ્પરેચર સેન્સેશન અથવા તો પાથવે ઓફ ધ ટેમ્પરેચર જોયું હતું ત્યારે આપણે ફર્સ્ટ ઓર્ડર ન્યુરોન, સેકન્ડ ઓર્ડર ન્યુરોન અને થર્ડ ઓર્ડર ન્યુરોન જોયું હતું. સેમ આની અંદર first order neurons. First order neurons of auditory pathway are the bipolar cells of spinal ganglia situated in the modulus of the cochlea. Peripheral short processes, dendrites of the bipolar cells are distributed around the hair cells of organ of corti as afferent nerve fibers. The long processes or axons leave the ear as cochlear nerve fibers and enter medulla oblongata. In medulla oblongata, these fibers divide into two groups, which end on ventral cochlear nucleus and dorsal cochlear nucleus of the same side in the medulla oblongata. Efferent nerve fibers of hair cells. Efferent nerve fibers of hair cells arise from superior olivary nucleus. Fibers from this nucleus reach the hair cells by passing through the ventral and dorsal cochlear nuclei and cochlear nerve of the same side. Efferent nerve fibers to outer hair cells terminates directly on the cell body and controls the motility of the hair cells. Efferent nerve fibers to inner hair cell terminates on the auditory nerve fibers, which it leaves the inner hair cell. Where it leaves the inner hair cell. It controls the impulse outside output from this hair cell. Second order neurons. Neurons of dorsal and ventral cochlear nuclei in the medulla oblongata form the second order neurons of auditory pathway. Axons of the second order neurons run in 4 different groups. First group of fibers cross the midline and run to the opposite side to form the trapezoid body. Fibers from trapezoid body go to the superior olivary nucleus. Second group of fibers terminate at superior olivary nucleus of same side via trapezoid body of the same side. Third group of fibers run in lateral lemniscus of the same side and terminate in nucleus of lateral lemniscus of same side. Fourth group of fibers run into reticular formation, cross the midline as intermediate trapezoid fibers, and finally join the nucleus of laterus lemniscus of opposite side. Third order neurons. This order neurons are the superior olivary nuclei and nucleus of lateral lemniscus. Fibers of the third order neurons end in medial geniculate body, which forms the subcortical auditory center. Fibers from medial geniculate body go to the temporal cortex via internal capsule as auditory radiation. Some fibers from medial geniculate body go to inferior colliculus of tectum in midbrain. The fibers of auditory radiation are involved in reflex movement of head in response to auditory stimuli. So in this figure we can see the intermediate trapezoid body, superior olivary nucleus, ventral colliculus nucleus, dorsal cochlear nucleus, lateral lemniscus, nucleus of lateral lemniscus, medial geniculate body of thalamus, auditory radiation, and auditory cortex. So this way the impulse travels, right? Cortical auditory centers. Cortical auditory centers are in the temporal lobe of the cerebral cortex, and auditory areas are primary auditory area, which includes area 41 and area 42 and Wernicke area. Second auditory area or auditopsychic area, which includes area number 22. Areas 41 and 42 are the primary auditory areas situated in the anterior transverse gyrus and lateral surface of the superior temporal gyrus. Wernicke area is in upper part of the superior temporal gyrus, posterior to area number 41 and 42. And area 22 occupies the superior temporal gyrus. Functions of the cortical auditory centers. Cortical auditory centers are concerned with the perception of auditory impulses, analysis of pitch and intensity of sound, and determination of the source of sound. Areas 41 and 42 are concerned with the perception of auditory impulses only. However, analysis and interpretation of sound are carried out by Wernicke area with the help of area 22. So this was all about auditory pathway. So again we are going to come to our mnemonic. So let's go through this again. So basically the nerve impulse go from the auditory nerve, go to the auditory nerve, which is the vestibulocochlear nerve. Then it reaches to the cochlear nucleus, colliculus nucleus. It's a cochlear nucleus. Then it travels to the superior olivary nucleus. Then it goes to lateral lemniscus, and from there it reaches to inferior colliculus, and finally to the medial geniculate body. And from here the fibers pass into the auditory centers. So basically તમારે આ mnemonic યાદ રાખવાનું હોય. So yeah, this was it. I have tried to make it easier. Let me know if you are having any query. Thank you.